When Trump told Fox News that something's going to have to be done about Mexico, he wasn't talking about trade deals or border walls. He was talking about military intervention in America's largest trading partner. If you watched President Trump's press conference yesterday about the Venezuela operation and thought the story was contained to South America, you missed the most dangerous moment of the entire event. Buried in his rambling responses about running Venezuela and threatening Iran was a casual comment about Mexico that should send chills through anyone who understands the implications. When asked about America's southern neighbor, Trump didn't discuss diplomacy, trade negotiations, or border security cooperation. He talked about Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum like she was a failed leader of a failing state, and he talked about American military intervention like it was an inevitable solution to a problem she refuses to acknowledge. This isn't hyperbole or campaign rhetoric. This is the sitting president of the United States, fresh off a military operation that removed a foreign head of state, suggesting that Mexico might be next on his list. The speed of this escalation, the casual nature of the threat, and the complete disregard for the catastrophic consequences of such an action reveal an administration that appears to be making foreign policy decisions without any coherent strategic framework. According to multiple sources familiar with the conversation, Trump has repeatedly told Sheinbaum that American forces could help Mexico deal with its cartel problem. Her response, as Trump described it publicly, has been consistent. No, 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 Mr. President. No, 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 please. But Trump's interpretation of this rejection isn't that Mexico is asserting its sovereignty or that Sheinbaum has legitimate concerns about foreign military intervention. His interpretation is that she's either incapable of governing her own country or complicit in the cartel operations themselves. The implications of this thinking are staggering. Mexico isn't Venezuela or Iran. It's America's largest trading partner, with over $800 billion in bilateral trade annually. It's a democratic ally that shares a 2,000-mile border with the United States. It's a country of 128 million people with a sophisticated military, a functioning government, and deep economic integration with American communities from California to Texas. Military intervention in Mexico wouldn't be a foreign operation. It would be a war next door, with consequences that would reshape North America permanently. Legal experts are raising immediate questions about what authority Trump believes he has to intervene in Mexico. Unlike Venezuela, which had no functioning relationship with the United States, Mexico is bound to America through NAFTA's successor agreement, dozens of bilateral treaties, and extensive military cooperation agreements. Any unauthorized military action across the Mexican border would violate not just international law, but potentially dozens of existing agreements that form the foundation of North American economic integration. The economic implications alone should terrify anyone involved in cross-border commerce. Mexico is America's top trading partner, ahead of China and Canada. American companies have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in Mexican operations, employing millions of workers on both sides of the border. The integrated supply chains that connect American and Mexican manufacturing would be severed instantly by military conflict. The economic disruption would make the Venezuela operation look like a minor diplomatic dispute by comparison. Trump's characterization of President Sheinbaum reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of both Mexican politics and the nature of the cartel problem. Sheinbaum isn't a weak leader presiding over a failed state. She's a democratically elected president with a PhD in physics who won office with the largest margin in Mexican history. She's dealing with a complex security challenge that has roots in American demand for drugs, American gun trafficking, and decades of policy decisions on both sides of the border. The idea that this problem can be solved through American military intervention demonstrates a profound ignorance of the factors that created it. The cartel issue itself is far more complicated than Trump's public statements suggest. While it's true that criminal organizations exercise significant control over territory in parts of Mexico, they do so partly because of American policies that created the market conditions for their existence. American drug demand drives the trade. American weapons, often purchased legally in the United States and trafficked south, arm the cartels. American banking systems often inadvertently facilitate money laundering. Treating this as a purely Mexican problem that requires American military solutions ignores the fundamental fact that it's a bilateral challenge requiring bilateral solutions. Intelligence assessments suggest that military intervention in Mexico would be exponentially more complex than the Venezuela operation. Mexico's cartels aren't a government that can be removed through targeted strikes. They're diffuse criminal networks embedded in local economies and power structures across the country. Many have more sophisticated weapons and better intelligence capabilities than the Venezuelan military that folded within hours. Some have demonstrated the ability to attack government facilities, down military helicopters, and control territory larger than entire American states. The geopolitical implications extend far beyond North America. Mexico maintains relationships with countries that could complicate American intervention. China has significant economic interests in Mexico and has been working to expand its influence there as a counterweight to American dominance. Russia, already engaged in confrontations with the United States over Ukraine, Iran, and now Venezuela, could see Mexican intervention as an opportunity to open yet another front against American interests. Congressional sources are describing panic among lawmakers who were already struggling to understand the administration's commitments in Venezuela and Iran. The possibility of military action in Mexico would require them to consider conflicts on three separate continents simultaneously, with no clear strategic justification for any of them. Republican senators who represent border states are particularly concerned, as their constituents depend heavily on cross-border economic relationships that would be destroyed by conflict. The practical challenges of intervention in Mexico are unlike anything America has faced in recent decades. The border between the United States and Mexico isn't a distant ocean or foreign territory. It's a line that runs through communities where families live on both sides, where workers cross daily for employment, where students attend school, where people shop and worship and conduct business. Military operations in Mexico would directly affect millions of American citizens whose lives are integrated with Mexican communities. Border state governors are reportedly expressing private concerns about the administration's rhetoric. Texas, California, Arizona, and New Mexico have economies that are fundamentally dependent on Mexican trade and labor. The disruption caused by military conflict would devastate these states economically and socially. Local officials are describing contingency planning for scenarios they never imagined having to consider: how to manage refugee flows, how to secure critical infrastructure, how to maintain economic relationships during armed conflict with their largest neighbor. The humanitarian implications are equally troubling. Mexico hosts millions of Central American migrants who have fled violence and poverty in their home countries. Military conflict in Mexico could trigger a refugee crisis that would dwarf anything America has seen in its history. The same administration that has promised to seal the border and conduct mass deportations would suddenly face millions of people fleeing a war zone that America had created. International allies are watching these developments with growing alarm. Canada, which is also integrated economically with Mexico through trade agreements, has expressed private concerns about the stability of North American economic relationships. European allies, already struggling to understand American policy in Venezuela and Iran, are questioning whether the United States has abandoned diplomatic solutions in favor of military force as a first resort. The timing of these threats is particularly concerning given the broader pattern of Trump's foreign policy decisions. In less than 2 weeks, he has committed America to governing Venezuela indefinitely, threatened military intervention in Iran, and now suggested military action in Mexico. This isn't a coherent strategy. It's a series of reactive decisions that appear to be driven more by emotion and opportunity than by careful planning or strategic thinking. Mexican officials are reportedly taking these threats seriously despite their public dismissals. Sources familiar with government discussions describe contingency planning for scenarios that include American military incursions, economic warfare, and the collapse of bilateral cooperation agreements. The Mexican military, while smaller than America's, is professional and well-equipped, and has demonstrated the ability to conduct complex operations against well-armed criminal organizations. The legal precedent being established here extends far beyond Mexico. If the United States can threaten military intervention in any country where criminal organizations operate, it's effectively claiming the right to intervene anywhere in the world. This precedent could be used to justify action in Colombia, Brazil, Nigeria, Afghanistan, or any other country dealing with organized crime. It represents a fundamental expansion of presidential war powers that goes far beyond anything contemplated by the Constitution or international law. Economic markets are already responding to the uncertainty. The peso has weakened against the dollar, Mexican stock markets have declined, and investors are beginning to price in the risk of conflict. American companies with significant Mexican operations are reportedly developing contingency plans for scenarios ranging from trade disruptions to asset seizures. The economic integration that has defined North America for 3 decades could unravel within months if these tensions continue to escalate. The domestic political implications are equally significant. Trump won the presidency partly on promises to end foreign interventions and bring American troops home. The idea that he would start a war with America's largest trading partner contradicts every America First principle he claimed to represent. It would expose the fundamental contradiction between his isolationist rhetoric and his interventionist actions. What makes this situation particularly dangerous is the compressed timeline. Unlike previous military buildups that took months or years to develop, Trump's approach appears to be moving from threat to action within days or weeks. This gives little time for diplomatic solutions, economic adjustments, or international coordination. It also provides minimal opportunity for Congress to exercise its constitutional authority over declarations of war. The precedent of the Venezuela operation makes these threats more credible than they might otherwise be. A week ago, the idea of American forces extracting a foreign head of state seemed impossible. Today, it's accomplished fact. Mexican officials can no longer dismiss Trump's threats as bluster when he's demonstrated his willingness to act on them. As this story develops, the key question isn't whether America has the military capability to intervene in Mexico. It clearly does. The question is whether the administration has considered the economic, diplomatic, humanitarian, and strategic consequences of such an intervention. Because unlike Venezuela, which was isolated and economically irrelevant to most Americans, Mexico is integrated into every aspect of American life. A war there wouldn't be a foreign conflict. It would be a civil war in North America with consequences that would last generations.